The suburban morning light filtered through our kitchen window, casting familiar shadows across the granite countertops that Jessica and I had chosen together 12 years ago. I watched my wife pour her coffee, her movements precise and clinical, the same way she handled everything in her laboratory at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. At 42, Jessica still had that focused intensity that first attracted me during our graduate school days at NC State. "Running late again?" I asked, noting how she checked her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Clinical review meeting at 8:30, she replied without looking up. "The cardiovascular trial data is showing some interesting anomalies we need to discuss." I nodded, understanding the demands of her work. As a senior software architect specializing in cybersecurity, I appreciated the pressure of complex projects and tight deadlines. Our North Hills home in Raleigh reflected 2 decades of dual professional incomes, the kind of place where technology executives and research scientists raise their families alongside lawyers and doctors. "Dad, can you drive me to school today?" Sophia bounded into the kitchen, her 17-year-old energy a stark contrast to her mother's measured calm. "Mom's already in her work zone." "Of course, sweetheart." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "Ready for your AP chemistry exam?" "Born ready," she grinned, the same smile that had melted my heart since she was 2. Jessica finally looked up from her phone. "I might be home late tonight. We're running extended analysis on the Phase 3 data." "No problem. Sophia and I can handle dinner." I kissed Jessica's cheek, noting the subtle tension in her shoulders. "Everything okay with the trial?" "Just the usual regulatory pressure, nothing I can't handle." After dropping Sophia at North Raleigh Christian Academy, I returned home to my converted basement office. The space combined my day job requirements: multiple monitors, secure network connections, encrypted drives, with my personal passion for cryptography. Vintage cipher wheels, historical codebooks, and framed examples of famous cryptographic breakthroughs decorated the walls between technical certifications and family photos. My current project involved designing security protocols for a new financial services platform. The work demanded deep focus, so I welcomed the interruption when Jessica called around 11. "Hey, quick question." Her voice carried that clinical tone she used for work calls. "Can you grab the mail when it comes? I'm expecting some documentation from the patent office." "Sure thing. Anything urgent?" "Just routine IP protection stuff." "Thanks, Alex." The conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds, but something nagged at me afterward. Jessica rarely discussed patent applications, and her research typically involved modifying existing compounds rather than developing entirely new ones. Still, pharmaceutical research was her expertise, not mine. That afternoon, while Sophia worked on homework upstairs, I found myself thinking about patterns. Not the data structures I analyzed for work, but the subtle changes in our household routine over the past few months. Jessica's promotion to senior research director in February had brought increased responsibilities, longer hours, and more frequent travel. But successful careers required sacrifices. I understood that better than most. My phone buzzed with a text from my former college roommate, Ray Thompson. "Coffee tomorrow. Got some interesting cybercrime cases I'd love to run past you?" Ray worked as a detective with the Wake County Sheriff's Office, specializing in digital forensics. Our monthly coffee sessions had become informal consulting opportunities where his police investigations intersected with my cybersecurity expertise. "Absolutely," I replied. "Looking forward to it." That evening, Jessica returned home around 9:30, carrying her laptop bag and a stack of research journals. Sophia had already finished her homework and retreated to her room for video calls with college-bound friends. "How was the meeting?" I asked, as Jessica heated leftover pasta in the microwave. "Productive. We identified several data points that need deeper analysis." She sat across from me at the kitchen table, but her attention remained divided between our conversation and her phone. I might need to attend a follow-up conference in Atlanta next month. Another conference? I tried to keep my tone neutral. Didn't you just get back from the cardiology symposium in Charlotte? Different focus. This one's specifically about pharmaceutical cardiotoxicology research. Jessica's explanation came out rehearsed, like she'd practiced the words. Dr. Martinez thinks my current research could have broader applications. I nodded, though something about her explanation felt incomplete. In 19 years of marriage, I'd learned to trust Jessica's professional judgment. Her work involved complexities I couldn't fully appreciate, just as my cybersecurity projects required technical knowledge that would bore her to tears. Later that night, as Jessica showered upstairs, I found myself staring at my home office walls. The cryptographic artifacts represented decades of fascination with codes, puzzles, and hidden meanings. During graduate school, I'd minored in mathematics with a focus on number theory and encryption algorithms. What started as academic interest had evolved into both professional expertise and personal hobby. My latest project involved recreating the mechanics of the famous Enigma machine, working from original specifications to build a functioning replica. The meticulous process of understanding how information could be hidden, transformed, and recovered had always appealed to the logical part of my mind. Jessica emerged from the bathroom wearing her favorite cotton pajamas, her damp hair falling across her shoulders. For a moment, she looked exactly like the graduate student I'd fallen in love with 23 years earlier. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "Just work stuff. The financial services project is hitting some interesting encryption challenges." She sat on the bed beside me. "Tell me about it." I explained the technical requirements for protecting high-frequency trading data while maintaining microsecond response times. Jessica listened attentively, asking intelligent questions about key management and threat modeling. These conversations had always been one of our marriage's strengths. Two analytical minds engaging with complex problems. "You'll figure it out," she said finally. "You always do." As she settled into sleep beside me, I felt the familiar comfort of our shared life. Our marriage had survived the usual challenges: financial stress during our early careers, Jessica's miscarriage 6 years ago, my father's death 3 years back. We'd built something solid together: a successful daughter, financial security, professional recognition, community respect. Yet something indefinable had shifted recently. Jessica seemed more guarded, more careful with her words. Her phone had become a constant companion, protected by biometric locks that she'd never used before. Her research trips had increased in frequency and duration. Maybe I was overthinking normal career progression. Jessica's pharmaceutical work involved proprietary information worth millions of dollars. Increased security consciousness made perfect sense. But as I drifted towards sleep, my mind kept returning to patterns and anomalies. In cybersecurity, the most dangerous threats often appeared as subtle deviations from baseline behavior. Small changes that seemed reasonable individually, but suggested coordinated attack vectors when analyzed collectively. I pushed the thought away. This was my wife, not a security breach. Jessica deserved trust, not paranoid analysis. Still, something felt wrong. The next morning's coffee with Ray Thompson took place at our usual spot, a quiet cafe near NC State, where graduate students and tech workers gathered to discuss everything from research projects to startup ideas. Ray had aged well since our college days, his detective work keeping him physically fit while adding wisdom lines around his eyes. "How's the family?" he asked after we'd settled into our corner booth. "Good. Sophia's excited about Duke in the fall. Jessica just got promoted to senior research director. Pharmaceutical work, right? Must be interesting with all the current drug development news. More interesting than she can usually discuss. Proprietary research, clinical trials, regulatory compliance. Sometimes I think her work involves more secrets than mine." Ray stirred his coffee thoughtfully. Speaking of secrets, I've got a case that might interest you. Corporate espionage involving encrypted communications. The suspects are using sophisticated cipher techniques to hide their planning. What kind of ciphers? That's where it gets interesting. Not just simple substitution or even computer encryption. These guys are using book ciphers based on technical manuals. Really old-school stuff that most investigators wouldn't recognize. Ray pulled out his tablet, showing me examples of intercepted messages. The coded text looked like random letter sequences, but I could see underlying patterns that suggested systematic encryption. This is definitely book cipher, I confirmed after studying the samples. Probably using specific page, line, and word numbers from a reference text. The question is identifying the source book. Any suggestions for cracking it? Frequency analysis first, to confirm the cipher type. Then you need to identify the reference text, usually something both parties would have legitimate access to. Professional manuals, textbooks, even novels work if both sides own the same edition. We spent another hour discussing cryptographic investigation techniques. Ray's cases often involved criminals who thought sophisticated ciphers would protect them from police analysis. Most underestimated how much traditional cryptography knowledge still existed in academic and professional circles. Want to take a consulting look at the actual evidence? Ray asked as we prepared to leave. Department budget includes payments for technical expertise. Sure. Send me copies of the intercepted communications and I'll see what I can determine. The drive home took me through neighborhoods that had defined our family's life for over a decade. Sophia's elementary school, the community center where Jessica and I had volunteered for charity fundraisers, the medical office park where our family doctor worked alongside specialists who'd treated everything from Sophia's childhood ear infections to Jessica's recent stress-related insomnia. At home, I found a package waiting on our front porch, a thick envelope addressed to Jessica from Atlanta Medical Conference Services. The return address matched the organization she'd mentioned planning to attend next month. I placed it on her desk upstairs, noting the weight suggested substantial documentation rather than simple registration materials. My afternoon work session proved unusually productive. The financial services encryption challenge that had stumped me for weeks suddenly yielded to a hybrid approach, combining elliptic curve algorithms with quantum-resistant techniques. Sometimes breakthrough moments arrived when your conscious mind stopped forcing solutions and allowed deeper pattern recognition to surface. Around 4 o'clock, I heard Sophia's key in the front door. Dad, you home? Downstairs. How was school? She appeared at the top of the basement stairs, still wearing her school uniform but with the blazer draped over her arm. AP Chem was brutal, but I think I did okay. Where's Mom? Still at work. She mentioned staying late for data analysis. Again? Sophia frowned. She's been working crazy hours lately. New promotion means new responsibilities. Remember when I got promoted as senior architect? I practically lived at the office for 3 months. Sophia accepted this explanation, but her observation echoed my own concerns. Jessica's schedule had become increasingly unpredictable, with last-minute changes and unexplained delays becoming routine rather than exceptional. Want to work on your college application essays? I offered. I can help with the technical writing structure. Actually, yeah. Duke's supplemental questions are harder than I expected. We spent the next 2 hours in my office, Sophia working on her laptop while I provided feedback on organization and clarity. Her writing demonstrated the analytical thinking she'd inherited from both parents. Careful observation, logical reasoning, clear communication. Watching her develop these skills filled me with pride and optimism for her future. Around 6:30, Jessica called to say she'd be even later than expected. Lab equipment malfunction, she explained. We're running backup analysis on critical samples. Could be another few hours. No problem. Sophia and I will order pizza. Thanks for understanding. This project is really demanding right now. After dinner, Sophia retreated upstairs to video chat with friends while I returned to my office. Ray had emailed the cipher samples from his case, and I found myself engrossed in the cryptographic puzzle. The patterns were more sophisticated than typical criminal communications. Whoever created these codes understood classical cryptography principles. Working through frequency analysis confirmed my initial assessment. This was definitely book cipher technique. The challenge lay in identifying the reference text. Criminal organizations typically chose books that both parties could access without suspicion. Technical manuals, textbooks, even popular novels. Around 10 o'clock, I heard Jessica's car in the driveway. She entered through the garage, her footsteps heavy with exhaustion as she climbed the stairs to our bedroom. I saved my work on Ray's case and followed, finding her sitting on the bed removing her work shoes. "Rough day?" I asked. "Equipment failure at the worst possible time. We lost 6 hours of analysis and had to start over with backup samples." Jessica rubbed her temples. "Sometimes I wonder if the stress is worth it." "Any particular reason for the increased pressure lately?" She hesitated for just a moment. "Barely noticeable unless you were watching for it." "Regulatory deadlines. The FDA wants expanded safety data on our cardiac drug candidates. More comprehensive toxicology profiles." "Makes sense. Heart medication safety is obviously critical." "Exactly. We can't afford any oversights." Jessica began changing into her pajamas. "How was your day?" I told her about my breakthrough on the financial services project and my coffee meeting with Ray, omitting the details about criminal cipher analysis. Jessica listened with appropriate interest, but I sensed distraction beneath her responses. That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I found myself staring at the ceiling and thinking about patterns again. Her explanation for today's delays made sense individually, but when combined with recent changes in behavior, schedule, and communication patterns, they suggested something more systematic. In cybersecurity, we called it anomaly detection, identifying deviations from baseline that might indicate compromise or attack. The challenge lay in distinguishing genuine threats from normal operational variations. Was I applying professional paranoia to personal relationships? Or had my marriage been compromised in ways I didn't yet understand? I needed more data before drawing conclusions. But for the first time in 19 years, I found myself wondering what secrets my wife might be keeping. The following week passed in what felt like normal routine, though I found myself paying closer attention to details. Jessica's schedule remained unpredictable. Early departures, late arrivals, weekend work sessions that required her complete focus. She'd converted our guest bedroom into a temporary office space, claiming she needed isolation for complex data analysis that couldn't be interrupted. On Thursday evening, while Jessica worked upstairs and Sophia studied for her AP biology exam, I decided to organize some old files in the basement storage area. The space served as a repository for documents we needed to keep but rarely accessed. Tax returns, insurance papers, medical records, academic transcripts. I was looking for our 2019 tax documents when I noticed a box I didn't recognize, tucked behind Jessica's graduate school textbooks. The cardboard was newer than our usual storage containers, unmarked except for Jessica's handwriting in black marker. Research materials, personal. Curiosity overrode privacy concerns. Jessica and I had always maintained open access to each other's belongings. We shared financial accounts, email passwords, even laptop login credentials. Transparency had been one of our marriage's foundational principles. The box contained mostly what I expected: old research papers, conference proceedings, pharmaceutical industry journals. But nestled at the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, I found something unexpected: a leather-bound journal with a small brass lock. The journal felt substantial in my hands, its pages dense with handwritten entries. The lock had been left open, as if Jessica intended to access the contents regularly. I opened to the first page and immediately realized why the journal was hidden. Most of the contents were written in code, though some entries appeared to be in plain text: routine notes about work meetings, conference schedules, and research deadlines. But the more personal entries, especially those marked with specific dates, were clearly encrypted. Page after page of seemingly random letters, numbers, and symbols filled the journal from front to back. Some entries were short, just a few lines of coded text. Others extended for several pages, dense blocks of encrypted information organized by date. My cryptographic training kicked in immediately. This wasn't random scribbling or artistic expression. The letter distributions, recurring patterns, and systematic organization indicated sophisticated cipher technique. Someone had taken considerable time and effort to encrypt these entries. Why would Jessica keep a coded journal? And why hide it in storage rather than her office or bedroom? I photographed several pages with my phone, then carefully returned the journal to its original position. The discovery raised more questions than it answered, but one thing was certain. My wife had secrets important enough to encrypt. Back in my office, I uploaded the photos to my secure workstation and began preliminary analysis. The cipher definitely used substitution technique, but the patterns were more complex than simple letter replacement. Frequency distribution suggested possible book cipher methodology, the same technique Ray's criminals were using. If this was book cipher, I would need to identify the reference text. Given Jessica's background, the most likely candidates were her pharmaceutical textbooks, research manuals, or professional publications. The challenge lay in testing various possibilities without Jessica discovering my investigation. Over the next several days, I maintained normal routines while systematically analyzing the cipher samples. Jessica's behavior provided no obvious clues. She seemed unaware that her journal had been discovered. Her work schedule remained demanding, with frequent late nights and weekend sessions. On Sunday morning, while Jessica attended a lab safety meeting and Sophia visited friends, I returned to the storage area for more detailed examination. This time, I photographed every page of the journal, creating a complete archive of the encrypted contents. The dates confirmed that Jessica had been maintaining this journal for approximately 3 years. The earliest entries dated back to January 2021, right around the time she'd attended a pharmaceutical conference in Atlanta. Recent entries were longer and more frequent, suggesting increased activity or urgency. Back in my office, I applied systematic cryptographic analysis to the photographed pages. Frequency analysis confirmed substitution cipher technique. Pattern recognition suggested book cipher methodology. The challenge was identifying the reference text from dozens of possibilities. I started with Jessica's most frequently used pharmaceutical references: her graduate school pharmacology textbook, current drug development manuals, clinical trial methodology guides. Book cipher technique typically used page, line, and word numbers to identify specific letters or words from the reference text. The breakthrough came on Tuesday evening. While testing cipher combinations against Jessica's graduate pharmacology textbook, I noticed letter patterns that matched specific pages in the drug interaction chapters. The cipher used a straightforward but effective system: page number, line number, word number, letter position. Once I understood the methodology, decryption became methodical rather than mysterious. I created a simple computer program to automate the translation process, feeding it cipher numbers and receiving decoded text output. The first decrypted entry made my blood run cold. January 15, 2021. Met Marcus again at the Atlanta conference. 3 years since pharmacy school, but the attraction is still there. He's married too, but unhappy. We talked for hours about everything except our spouses. I know this is dangerous, but I can't stop thinking about him. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the decoded text. Jessica was having an affair. The encrypted journal documented a relationship with someone named Marcus, someone she'd known since pharmacy school who was also married. My hands trembled as I decoded the next entry. January 22, 2021. Marcus called tonight while Alex was at his cryptography club meeting. We talked for 2 hours. He understands my frustrations with marriage, career pressure, feeling trapped in suburban routine. Alex is a good man, but predictable. Safe. Marcus makes me feel alive again. The entries continued chronologically, documenting the development of Jessica's affair. Marcus was Dr. Marcus Webb, a cardiologist specializing in electrophysiology and cardiotoxicology. They'd met during pharmaceutical conferences, conducted their relationship through encrypted communications and hotel encounters, and had been planning a future together for over 3 years. But as I decoded more entries, the content became increasingly disturbing. Recent passages referenced not just affair logistics, but financial planning, insurance policies, and ominous phrases about when it's time and he won't see it coming. The most recent entry, dated just 5 days earlier, made my blood freeze. May 8th, 2024. Countdown starts tomorrow, 30 days until freedom. Marcus says the compound is ready and rarely detected by standard screening. Alex suspects nothing. Soon we'll be together without complications. I sat back in my chair, struggling to process what I'd discovered. This wasn't just an affair journal. Jessica and her lover were planning something terrible. Something that involved a countdown, a compound that would be difficult to detect, and my apparent ignorance of their intentions. The timeline was clear. 30 days from May 9th meant June 7th. Whatever they were planning would happen in less than 3 weeks. I forced myself to decode additional entries, searching for more specific details. The picture that emerged was beyond my worst fears. Jessica and Dr. Webb weren't just planning to run away together. They were planning to kill me. References to insurance policies, natural causes, and compounds rarely detected by standard screening painted a horrifying scenario. Dr. Webb's expertise in cardiotoxicology provided the methodology. Jessica's pharmaceutical laboratory access provided the means. My death would appear natural, a cardiac event that wouldn't raise suspicion. My first instinct was confrontation, to storm upstairs and demand explanations. But training and instinct overrode emotion. In cybersecurity, discovering an attack meant gathering intelligence before responding. Premature action could destroy evidence and alert the attackers to begin countermeasures. I needed professional help, but carefully. If Jessica and Dr. Webb were planning murder, they would be monitoring my communications and behavior for signs of discovery. I couldn't risk exposing my knowledge until I had sufficient evidence to protect myself and Sophia. Ray Thompson. My former roommate's law enforcement background and our established consulting relationship provided perfect cover for contact. I could present the cipher analysis as related to his criminal investigation case. I spent the rest of the evening creating comprehensive documentation, photographs of the original journal pages, computer analysis of the cipher methodology, complete transcriptions of decoded entries. If something happened to me, this evidence needed to survive. Around 11 o'clock, Jessica returned from her lab session, looking tired but satisfied. "How was the analysis?" I asked, maintaining normal conversation. "Productive. We're making real progress on the cardiotoxicology profiles." She kissed my cheek before heading upstairs. "Sorry for the long hours lately. This project should wrap up soon." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of supportive husband while knowing she'd just spent the evening planning my murder. That night, I lay awake listening to Jessica's steady breathing, wondering how long she'd been thinking about killing me. 3 years of pretending to love me while secretly planning my death. 3 years of family dinners, vacation trips, anniversary celebrations, and parent-teacher conferences, all while conducting an affair and plotting murder. The betrayal was devastating, but the immediate threat demanded focus. I had 25 days to gather evidence, protect Sophia, and stop 2 people who thought they were committing the perfect crime. They'd made one critical mistake, encrypting their plans in a code I could break. The next morning, I called Ray Thompson from my office. "Hey Ray, got some interesting results on that cipher analysis. Can we meet for coffee this afternoon?" "Absolutely. Same place?" "Actually, let me buy you lunch at that new place near your office. I've got some detailed findings to show you." The restaurant Ray suggested was busy enough to provide privacy through ambient noise, but quiet enough for serious conversation. I brought printed copies of selected journal entries, enough to demonstrate the threat without revealing the complete scope of my discovery. "Remember those book cipher samples you showed me last week?" I began after we'd ordered. "Of course. Any progress?" "More than I expected. I've identified the methodology and reference text, but there's a complication." I lowered my voice. "The cipher technique isn't just academic interest anymore. I need to discuss something confidential." Ray's expression shifted to professional attention. "What kind of confidential?" "The kind that might require police involvement." I handed him the printouts. "These are decrypted samples from a journal I discovered. The contents suggest criminal activity." Ray read the translated entries, his face growing increasingly serious. The selected passages documented affair planning and financial discussions without revealing the murder conspiracy details. I needed to gauge his response before sharing everything. "Where did you find this journal?" he asked finally. "That's the confidential part. The source has to remain protected until we determine the proper legal approach." I met his eyes directly. "Ray, if these entries are accurate, we're looking at conspiracy charges. Maybe worse." "Conspiracy to commit what?" I handed him additional printouts, the entries referencing insurance policies, compounds, and timeline countdowns. Ray's expression darkened as he read the decoded passages. "Jesus, Alex, this looks like murder planning." He looked up from the papers. "You need to tell me where this journal came from." "The source is someone close to me. Someone whose safety might be compromised if we handle this wrong." I chose my words carefully. "I need your advice on protecting evidence and potential witnesses." Ray studied my face, clearly recognizing the personal stakes involved. "If this journal documents conspiracy to commit murder, we need to move fast. How current are these entries?" "Very recent. There's a 30-day countdown that started May 9th. Whatever they're planning happens June 7th. "That's less than 3 weeks." Ray pulled out his phone. "I'm calling this into homicide. We need detectives who specialize in conspiracy cases." "Wait," I stopped him. "If we move too quickly, we might lose the chance to catch them in the act. And we still need to identify all the participants." "Alex, if someone's planning murder, we can't play games with timing." "I understand, but hear me out." I leaned forward. "These people think they're committing the perfect crime. They've planned for years, used sophisticated encryption, and chosen methods designed to avoid detection. If we arrest them prematurely, we might not have enough evidence for conviction." Ray considered this. "What are you suggesting?" "Controlled investigation. We document everything, identify all participants, and gather irrefutable evidence before making arrests. The journal gives us inside knowledge of their timeline and methodology. That's incredibly dangerous if you're the intended victim." I nodded. "But it's also our best chance to stop them completely and to protect any other potential targets." We spent the next hour developing a preliminary strategy. Ray would consult with homicide detectives about proper procedures for conspiracy investigation. I would continue monitoring the situation while maintaining normal behavior. We agreed to meet again in 2 days with a more detailed plan. Driving home, I felt both relief and increased anxiety. Professional help was now involved, but the danger remained immediate and personal. For the next 25 days, I would need to pretend ignorance while gathering evidence against my wife and her lover. That evening, Jessica seemed particularly affectionate, cooking my favorite dinner, asking about my work projects, suggesting we plan a summer vacation after her current research concluded. "Where would you like to go?" she asked while we cleaned up the kitchen. "Wherever you want. You've been working so hard lately. Maybe somewhere relaxing. Mountains or beach. Just the three of us." She smiled warmly. "We should make more time for family activities." I agreed enthusiastically, wondering if she felt guilty about planning my death or was simply establishing alibis for normal marital behavior. Either way, her performance was flawless. The loving wife discussing vacation plans while secretly counting down to murder. After Sophia went to bed, Jessica and I watched a movie together on the living room couch. She curled against my side, her head on my shoulder, exactly as she had for nearly 2 decades. The familiar comfort felt surreal, knowing what I now knew about her intentions. "Alex," she said during a quiet moment in the film. "Yeah? I love you. You know that, right?" "Of course. I love you too." The words came automatically, but they felt hollow and strange. Did Jessica actually believe she loved me while planning my murder? Or was this more careful manipulation designed to avoid suspicion? Later, as we prepared for bed, I found myself studying her face for signs of deception or guilt. But Jessica appeared completely normal, tired from work, affectionate toward me, concerned about Sophia's college preparations. If I hadn't decoded her journal, I would never suspect anything was wrong. That night, I lay awake planning my investigation strategy. I needed to identify Dr. Marcus Webb's background, understand the specific compounds they plan to use, document their communications, and gather evidence of their conspiracy without alerting them to my knowledge. Most importantly, I needed to protect Sophia. My daughter had no idea her mother was planning murder. When the truth emerged, Sophia's world would collapse. I had to ensure her safety and emotional well-being throughout whatever came next. 24 days until June 7th. 24 days to gather evidence, work with police, and stop 2 people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. They'd encrypted their plans in a sophisticated cipher, but they'd underestimated their target. I was a cybersecurity expert who specialized in detecting and defeating attacks. This was the most personal threat I'd ever faced, and I would use every skill I possessed to survive and protect my family. The cipher had revealed their secrets. Now I needed to turn that knowledge into justice. Over the next few days, I developed a routine that balanced normal behavior with covert investigation. Jessica's schedule remained demanding, providing opportunities to access shared areas and gather additional intelligence. I began by researching Dr. Marcus Webb through public records and professional databases. His background was impressive. Cardiac electrophysiology specialty, research publications in cardiotoxicology, affiliations with major medical centers. But his personal life showed signs of stress. A divorce 3 years ago, financial difficulties related to alimony payments, and professional conflicts with former colleagues. Webb's expertise in cardiotoxicology was particularly troubling. His published research included papers on drug-induced cardiac arrhythmias, detection challenges for certain pharmaceutical compounds, and forensic analysis of suspected poisoning cases. He possessed exactly the knowledge required to plan a cardiac death that would be difficult to detect without targeted analysis. Through Jessica's pharmaceutical company directory, I confirmed that Webb served as a consulting cardiologist for clinical trials involving cardiac safety assessments. This provided legitimate cover for their professional relationship and access to Meridian Pharmaceuticals facilities. I also began monitoring Jessica's communications more carefully. Her personal laptop remained password protected, but she often left her work tablet accessible in the kitchen while preparing meals. The device contained encrypted messaging applications I hadn't seen before, secure communication tools that automatically deleted messages after a specified time. While I couldn't access the encrypted messages without risking detection, I was able to identify the communication patterns. Jessica sent and received messages during specific times: early morning before work, lunch breaks, and late evening after she thought I was asleep. The frequency had increased over the past month, consistent with the journal's countdown timeline. My meeting with Ray on Friday brought encouraging news. The homicide detectives were taking the conspiracy evidence seriously and had begun their own background investigation of Dr. Webb. They'd also consulted with pharmaceutical security experts about compound access and tracking. "The good news is that your evidence is solid," Ray explained over lunch. "The journal entries, combined with Webb's background and the timeline, provide probable cause for search warrants." "What about catching them in the act?" "That's where it gets complicated. If we wait too long, you might be in real danger. But if we move too early, we might not get enough evidence for murder conspiracy charges." We discussed the options: immediate arrest based on current evidence, controlled surveillance to gather additional proof, or a sting operation designed to catch them in action. Each approach carried different risks and potential outcomes. "There's something else," Ray continued. "The detectives want to interview you officially. Full statement, evidence authentication, witness protection discussion." "When?" "This weekend, if possible. We need to formalize everything before proceeding." I agreed to meet with detectives on Sunday afternoon, giving me time to prepare comprehensive documentation. The investigation was becoming official, which provided both protection and increased pressure. That evening, Jessica mentioned her upcoming trip to Atlanta. "The cardiotoxicology conference is next weekend," she said, while reviewing her travel itinerary. "I'll be leaving Friday afternoon and returning Sunday evening." "Same conference you mentioned before?" "Yes. Marcus will be presenting research on detection challenges for pharmaceutical compounds. Should be very informative." The casual mention of Dr. Webb's name sent chills through me. Jessica was discussing her lover and co-conspirator as if he were simply a professional colleague. Her ability to compartmentalize was both impressive and terrifying. "Will you be presenting anything?" I asked. "Just a poster session on our clinical trial safety data. Nothing as sophisticated as Marcus's research." I nodded supportively while noting the familiarity in her voice when discussing Webb. After 3 years of secret relationship, she'd grown comfortable thinking about him as Marcus rather than maintaining professional distance. On Saturday morning, while Jessica attended another lab session and Sophia visited friends, I conducted a thorough search of our house for additional evidence. The guest bedroom office Jessica had established contained research papers, pharmaceutical journals, and clinical trial documentation, all seemingly legitimate professional materials. But hidden in her desk drawer, I discovered something troubling. A small vial of clear liquid with a pharmaceutical company label I didn't recognize. The vial was nearly empty, as if most of its contents had been used or transferred elsewhere. I photographed the vial and its labeling before returning it to its original position. The label indicated a compound identification number rather than a standard drug name, suggesting experimental or restricted materials. Additional searching revealed printed email correspondence between Jessica and various pharmaceutical suppliers. Most discussions were routine, ordering standard laboratory reagents and analytical chemicals. But several emails referenced special materials and restricted access compounds that required special handling procedures. The evidence painted a clear picture. Jessica was using her laboratory access and professional connections to obtain materials that could cause cardiac death while avoiding standard detection methods. Sunday's meeting with Ray and the homicide detectives took place at the Wake County Sheriff's Office in a secure conference room designed for sensitive investigations. Detective Sarah Martinez specialized in conspiracy cases, while Detective James Powell handled forensic evidence analysis. I provided complete documentation of my discovery: photographs of the original journal, cipher analysis methodology, translated entries, and background research on Dr. Webb. The detectives reviewed everything systematically, asking detailed questions about timelines, evidence handling, and my relationship with the suspects. "Mr. Kane," Detective Martinez began. "Before we proceed, I need to confirm something important. Are you the intended victim referenced in these journal entries?" "Yes. Jessica is my wife. We've been married 19 years. And you're certain these entries describe a plan to kill you?" "The evidence is clear. References to insurance policies, compounds difficult to detect without specialized testing, natural causes, and a specific countdown timeline. Combined with Dr. Webb's cardiotoxicology expertise and Jessica's laboratory access, it's obviously murder planning." Detective Powell studied the translated journal entries. "The methodology is sophisticated. They're not amateur criminals. Which makes them more dangerous," Detective Martinez added, "but also more likely to make mistakes when they think they're safe." We discussed surveillance options and sting operation possibilities. The detectives preferred controlled observation, monitoring Jessica and Webb without alerting them to police involvement. This would allow documentation of additional evidence while maintaining my safety through discreet protection. "The timeline is our biggest challenge," Detective Martinez explained. "If the June 7th date is accurate, we have 17 days to gather evidence and make arrests." "What if they suspect something and accelerate their timeline?" I asked. "That's why we need you to maintain completely normal behavior. No changes in routine, communication patterns, or emotional responses. They can't know their plan has been discovered." Detective Powell outlined the evidence requirements for murder conspiracy charges. "We need proof of planning, material preparation, and specific intent. The journal provides planning evidence. We need to document the other elements. They would obtain warrants to monitor Dr. Webb's communications and financial activities. Surveillance teams would track both suspects during the Atlanta conference. Laboratory analysis would identify the compounds Jessica had accessed through her work." "What about my daughter?" I asked. "She has no idea what's happening?" "Sophia will need protection too," Detective Martinez confirmed. "We'll coordinate with family services to ensure her safety without revealing the investigation details." The meeting concluded with specific instructions for my role in the investigation. Continue normal routines, document any suspicious behavior, and maintain regular contact with Ray Thompson. Avoid confronting Jessica or changing my behavior in ways that might alert her to the discovery. Driving home, I felt both relief and increased tension. Professional law enforcement was now handling the investigation, but the immediate danger remained. For the next 17 days, I would continue living with someone who was planning to kill me. That evening, Jessica prepared dinner while discussing her Atlanta trip preparations. "The conference agenda looks fascinating," she said, chopping vegetables for a salad. "Marcus is presenting on Thursday afternoon about cardiac enzyme detection challenges." "Sounds technical." "Very. He's researched compounds that can cause cardiac events without triggering standard autopsy detection methods." Fascinating work, though somewhat morbid. I managed to respond normally despite the chilling implications of her words. Jessica was discussing murder methodology as if it were purely academic interest. "When do you leave on Friday?" I asked. "Afternoon flight. I'll miss Sophia's soccer game, but this conference only happens annually." "No problem. Sophia and I can handle the weekend." Jessica smiled warmly. "You're such a good father. Sophia's lucky to have you." The comment felt like psychological torture, praise for my parenting while planning to make Sophia an orphan. But I maintained normal responses, playing my role in Jessica's deception. Later that night, as Jessica slept beside me, I thought about the investigation timeline. 17 days to gather evidence, protect my family, and stop two people who thought they were committing the perfect crime. They'd underestimated their target. I was a cybersecurity expert who specialized in detecting hidden threats and sophisticated attacks. This was the most personal investigation of my life, and I would use every skill I possessed to expose their conspiracy. The cipher had revealed their plans. Now, professional investigators would document their crimes and ensure justice. But first, I had to survive the next 17 days without revealing what I knew. The week passed slowly, each day bringing me closer to Jessica's Atlanta trip and whatever plans she and Dr. Webb were finalizing. I maintained strict normalcy, work routines, family dinners, evening conversations about Sophia's college preparations, and our summer vacation ideas. Jessica seemed increasingly excited about the conference, discussing presentations she planned to attend and professional contacts she hoped to make. Her enthusiasm felt genuine, as if she truly looked forward to the academic aspects alongside her secret agenda. On Wednesday evening, she received a phone call that lasted over an hour. I could hear her voice from the guest bedroom office, but not specific words. The conversation's tone seemed intense, serious discussion rather than casual chat. When she returned to the living room where Sophia and I were watching a movie, Jessica appeared satisfied but slightly anxious. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Conference coordination. They've made some last-minute agenda changes that affect presentation scheduling." Jessica settled beside me on the couch. "Nothing major, just logistics." I nodded sympathetically while wondering what she and Dr. Webb had actually discussed. The timeline pressure was clearly affecting both conspirators, creating urgency that might lead to mistakes. Thursday morning brought encouraging news from Ray Thompson. The surveillance teams had confirmed Dr. Webb's Atlanta travel plans and identified his hotel reservation. They'd also obtained warrants to monitor his communications and financial activities during the conference. "The lab analysis came back on that vial you photographed," Ray informed me during our morning call. "It contained traces of a cardiotoxic compound, pharmaceutical materials that can be dangerous in improper doses." "What does that mean?" "It could cause cardiac problems that might appear natural unless specifically tested for. Your wife has been experimenting with dangerous substances." The confirmation was both terrifying and validating. Jessica wasn't just planning murder. She'd been actively preparing the methodology. That afternoon, while Jessica packed for her Atlanta trip, I helped Sophia with her AP biology study session. My daughter's enthusiasm for college-level science reminded me why protecting her was my highest priority. She had no idea her mother was a criminal, and I hoped to keep it that way until the investigation concluded. "Dad, are you okay?" Sophia asked during a break in our study session. "You seem distracted lately." "Just work stress. Big project deadlines coming up." "Mom seems stressed too. She's been working crazy hours and talking to herself sometimes." "Talking to herself?" "Like practicing conversations or presentations. I heard her in the guest bedroom office last night, going over the same phrases repeatedly." I filed this information mentally while reassuring Sophia that career pressure sometimes created unusual behaviors. But her observation was troubling. Jessica might be rehearsing scenarios related to the murder plan. Friday morning arrived with typical departure preparations. Jessica double-checked her conference materials, confirmed her flight details, and discussed Atlanta weather forecasts. Her behavior seemed completely normal for a business trip, showing no signs of stress about secret agendas. "I'll call tonight after the welcome reception," she promised, while loading her suitcase into the car. "Have a great conference. Learn lots of fascinating pharmaceutical science." Jessica laughed and kissed me goodbye. "I love how you make my work sound exciting instead of boring." I watched her drive away, knowing this might be the last normal conversation we'd ever have. When she returned from Atlanta, the investigation would move into its final phase. Ray called an hour later with an update. "Surveillance team has eyes on both subjects. Webb arrived at the hotel this morning, and your wife's flight landed on schedule." "Any unusual activity?" "Not yet. They're maintaining professional appearances so far, but we're monitoring all their communications and movements." I spent the weekend with Sophia, maintaining our usual father-daughter activities while staying in contact with the investigation team. We attended her soccer game, worked on college applications, and watched movies together. Normal family time that felt precious given the circumstances. Jessica called both Friday and Saturday evenings to check in. Her reports were routine: interesting presentations, professional networking, academic discussions. She mentioned attending Dr. Webb's presentation on Friday afternoon and finding it incredibly informative. Marcus really understands the complexities of cardiac toxicology, she said during Saturday's call. His research could have important applications for pharmaceutical safety protocols. Sunday afternoon brought Jessica's return flight and the end of the Atlanta conference. I met her at the airport, noting her relaxed and satisfied demeanor. The trip had apparently gone well from her perspective. "How was the conference?" I asked during the drive home. "Excellent. Very productive networking and some fascinating research presentations." Jessica seemed genuinely enthusiastic. "I made several professional contacts that could benefit our clinical trials." "Any particular highlights?" "Marcus's presentation was outstanding. He's really pushed the boundaries of cardiac safety research." Jessica's voice carried admiration that went beyond professional respect. "We had dinner Saturday night to discuss potential collaboration opportunities." I maintained neutral responses while noting her casual mention of a private dinner with her co-conspirator. They'd clearly used the conference as cover for finalizing their murder plans. That evening, after Jessica unpacked and settled back into home routines, I received a text from Ray. "Need to meet tomorrow morning. Important developments." The investigation was accelerating. Whatever surveillance teams had observed in Atlanta was significant enough to change our timeline. 13 days until June 7th, and the endgame was approaching. Monday morning's meeting with Ray took place at the same cafe where we'd first discussed the cipher analysis. But his expression was more serious than before, suggesting developments that would change everything. "The Atlanta surveillance provided exactly what we needed," Ray began without preamble. "Webb and your wife made several critical mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "They discussed specific murder logistics in Webb's hotel room. We obtained a court warrant for audio-video surveillance based on the journal evidence and probable cause. The judge ruled there was no expectation of privacy given the criminal conspiracy." Ray pulled out his tablet, showing surveillance photos of Jessica and Dr. Webb entering and leaving the hotel. "We have recordings of detailed planning conversations. They also made financial arrangements that establish clear conspiracy evidence." The recordings were damning. Jessica and Dr. Webb discussed compound dosages, timing strategies, and post-murder logistics with clinical precision. They'd planned my death like a medical procedure, analyzing variables and contingencies with professional thoroughness. "There's more," Ray continued. "Webb withdrew $15,000 in cash from his bank account. Your wife deposited the same amount in her new private account. Financial evidence of conspiracy payment." "When do you make arrests?" "That's the complication. The district attorney wants more evidence before proceeding. Conspiracy charges require proof of specific intent and material preparation. We have planning discussions, but we need documentation of actual murder attempts." Ray explained the prosecutor's reasoning. Jessica and Webb could claim their discussions were hypothetical academic interest rather than serious planning. Without evidence of actual poisoning attempts or weapon acquisition, conviction might be difficult. "So what's the plan?" "Controlled sting operation. We let them proceed with initial phases while documenting everything. When they actually attempt murder, we intervene with overwhelming evidence." The proposal was terrifying but logical. Rather than stopping the conspiracy before it began, investigators would allow Jessica and Webb to commit attempted murder while ensuring my safety through discreet protection. "How do you keep me alive during a sting operation?" "Multiple safety measures," Ray assured me. "Continuous surveillance, medical monitoring, immediate intervention capabilities. You'll never be in actual danger." We discussed the operational details. Surveillance teams would monitor all locations where an attempt might occur. Medical personnel would be standing by to counteract any poisoning attempts. Electronic monitoring would track my vital signs continuously. Before the operation, you'll receive a complete medical briefing, Ray continued. Emergency response teams will be positioned within a 2-minute radius of any location you visit. Paramedics with specialized antidote protocols and resuscitation equipment will maintain constant readiness. If anything goes wrong, medical intervention will be immediate. The timeline is still June 7th? I asked. Based on the Atlanta recordings, yes. They plan to make it look like a stress-induced cardiac event during a family outing. Very sophisticated methodology. I agreed to participate in the sting operation, understanding it was our best chance to gather irrefutable evidence. But the next 12 days would require extraordinary self-control, living normally with someone planning my death while knowing professional protection was monitoring every moment. That afternoon, Jessica seemed particularly affectionate and attentive. She prepared my favorite dinner, asked detailed questions about my work projects, and suggested we plan special family activities for the upcoming weekend. I've been thinking about our summer vacation, she said while we cleaned up the kitchen. Maybe we should do something really memorable this year. Any particular ideas? Adventure travel, mountain climbing, whitewater rafting, something exciting and challenging. Jessica's enthusiasm seemed genuine. Life's too short not to pursue thrilling experiences. The irony was overwhelming. My wife discussing adventure travel while planning my murder in 12 days. But I responded enthusiastically, playing my role in her elaborate deception. That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I thought about the investigation timeline. 12 days until the sting operation would either expose the conspiracy or result in my death. 12 days of pretending normalcy while knowing electronic surveillance was monitoring our bedroom, kitchen conversations, and family interactions. The cipher had revealed Jessica's secrets. Professional investigators had gathered the evidence, and now we would discover whether justice could triumph over sophisticated evil. But first, I had to survive 12 more days of living with someone who thought she was smarter than everyone else. The final week and a half passed in surreal slow motion. Each morning brought me closer to June 7th, and whatever Jessica and Dr. Webb had planned. I maintained absolute normalcy. Work routines, family dinners, bedtime conversations, while knowing surveillance teams were documenting every interaction. Jessica's behavior remained consistent, with a loving wife planning summer activities and supporting Sophia's college preparations. Her performance was flawless, showing no signs of stress or anticipation about secret agendas. If I hadn't decoded her journal, I would never suspect anything was wrong. On Tuesday, she suggested a family outing for the upcoming Friday. The weather forecast looks perfect, Jessica said while reviewing her phone. Why don't we drive up to Falls Lake for a picnic? We could spend the whole day hiking and relaxing. Sounds great. Sophia loves the lake trails. Perfect. I'll pack everything: food, drinks, first aid supplies. Jessica's enthusiasm seemed genuine. A full day of family time before summer gets too busy. I agreed enthusiastically while recognizing the significance. June 7th was Friday. The lake outing would provide the perfect cover for a staged cardiac event in a remote location where medical help might arrive too late. That evening, I received a coded text from Ray confirming the sting operation preparations. Medical personnel would be positioned near the lake, surveillance teams would monitor all locations, and electronic tracking would ensure my safety throughout the day. Wednesday brought Jessica's final preparations. She spent hours researching the Falls Lake area, studying trail maps and weather conditions with unusual thoroughness. Her planning went far beyond a simple family picnic, suggesting careful consideration of variables and contingencies. I want everything to be perfect, she explained when I commented on her detailed preparation. We don't get enough quality family time lately. That night, I lay awake thinking about the next 48 hours. Everything I'd learned, the decoded journal, the conspiracy evidence, the surveillance recordings, would soon be tested in real-world circumstances. Justice depended on catching Jessica and Dr. Webb in actual murder attempts. Thursday evening brought Jessica's final logistics discussion and my final briefing with the medical team. "I've packed everything for tomorrow's picnic," she announced cheerfully. "Food, drinks, hiking supplies, emergency medical kit." Earlier that afternoon, I had met with Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency response coordinator, who briefed me on the safety protocols. "Mr. Kane, we'll have paramedics stationed at 3 locations around Falls Lake," Dr. Chen had explained. "Each team carries specialized pharmaceutical antidotes and cardiac resuscitation equipment. Response time to any location will be under 2 minutes. You'll wear a concealed monitoring device that transmits your vital signs in real time." The medical team had even provided me with a mild antacid to take before any suspected poisoning attempt, which would help neutralize certain compounds and buy additional time for intervention. "Emergency medical kit?" I asked Jessica, returning to our conversation. "Just basic first aid supplies, bandages, antiseptic, some medication in case anyone has health problems." Jessica's explanation came out smoothly, as if she'd practiced the words. "Better safe than sorry in remote locations." I nodded supportively while noting her mention of cardiac medication. The sting operation was less than 18 hours away, and Jessica was already referencing the murder weapon. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow would determine whether months of investigation and preparation would result in justice or tragedy. The surveillance teams were in position, medical personnel were standing by, and electronic monitoring was active. But ultimately, my survival depended on maintaining perfect normalcy while Jessica attempted to kill me. Friday morning arrived with typical family outing preparations. Jessica packed the car with coolers, hiking equipment, and her carefully prepared emergency medical kit. Sophia was excited about the lake trip, chattering about wildlife photography opportunities and trail exploration plans. "Ready for a perfect family day?" Jessica asked as we loaded the final supplies. "Absolutely. This was a great idea." The drive to Falls Lake took 45 minutes through suburban neighborhoods and rural countryside. Jessica maintained cheerful conversation about vacation planning and Sophia's college preparations. Her performance was masterful, the loving mother and wife organizing quality family time. I recognized surveillance vehicles following at discreet distances, providing protection while maintaining operational security. Ray Thompson's team was monitoring everything, ready to intervene when Jessica made her move. At the lake, we established our picnic site near the main trail system. Jessica had chosen the location carefully, close enough to parking for easy access, but remote enough for privacy during critical moments. "Let's start with the easier trails," Jessica suggested while reviewing the trail map. "We can work up to more challenging hiking later." The morning passed pleasantly. We explored woodland trails, identified wildlife, and enjoyed Jessica's carefully prepared lunch. Sophia took dozens of photographs while Jessica and I discussed everything from work projects to vacation planning. But I noticed Jessica checking her watch frequently and scanning the surrounding area, as if expecting something or someone. The timing was clearly important to her plan. Around 2 o'clock, Jessica suggested we try a more challenging trail that led to elevated viewpoints overlooking the lake. "The exercise will be good for us," she explained, "and the views are supposed to be spectacular." The trail was steeper and more isolated than our morning routes. After 20 minutes of hiking, we reached a scenic overlook with panoramic lake views. Sophia immediately began photographing the landscape while Jessica and I rested on nearby benches. "This is beautiful," I said, admiring the scenery while staying alert for whatever Jessica had planned. "Perfect day for family time." Jessica opened her hiking pack, removing water bottles and what appeared to be energy drinks. You look tired, Alex. Maybe you should have something with electrolytes. She handed me a blue sports drink that looked different from the commercial brands we usually purchased. Something about it seemed off. What is this? I asked. Special formulation I got from the lab. High-performance electrolyte replacement. Jessica's explanation sounded professional and caring. Perfect for strenuous exercise. This was it, the murder attempt. I pretended to drink while actually spilling most of the liquid behind my bench. Jessica watched carefully, ensuring I appeared to consume what she believed would cause me harm. Feeling okay? She asked after I'd apparently finished the drink. Fine, just tired from the hiking. I maintained normal behavior while knowing surveillance teams were documenting everything. Over the next 30 minutes, Jessica monitored my condition with clinical attention disguised as wifely concern. She checked my pulse, observed my breathing, and asked repeatedly about chest pain or discomfort. Maybe we should head back, she suggested when I failed to show expected symptoms. You look pale. I feel fine, just enjoying the scenery. But Jessica's anxiety was increasing. Her carefully planned murder wasn't proceeding as expected. The cardiac compounds should have caused obvious distress by now. Suddenly, we heard footsteps on the trail behind us. Dr. Marcus Webb appeared, wearing hiking clothes and carrying a medical bag. Jessica, what a coincidence meeting you here. Webb's surprise seemed genuine, but Jessica's reaction revealed their coordination. Marcus, what are you doing at Falls Lake? Emergency call from a hiking accident nearby. Thought I'd check the trails for injured parties. Webb glanced at me with professional interest. Everyone feeling okay? Jessica quickly explained that I'd been experiencing minor fatigue during our hike. Webb offered to perform a quick medical evaluation, producing professional equipment from his bag. This was their backup plan. Dr. Webb would appear as a concerned physician responding to my medical emergency. His presence would provide cover for additional poisoning attempts or other lethal interventions. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I feel fine. Just needed a rest. Cardiac events during exercise can be very serious, Webb insisted. Let me at least check your vital signs. Before I could respond, Ray Thompson and Detective Martinez emerged from the woods, followed by uniformed officers. Dr. Marcus Webb and Jessica Kane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. The arrest was swift and professional. Webb and Jessica were separated, read their rights, and placed in police custody while evidence teams documented the crime scene. The contaminated drink was secured for laboratory analysis, along with Webb's medical equipment and Jessica's hiking supplies. Sophia's reaction was devastating. She watched in confusion and horror as her mother was handcuffed and led away, unable to comprehend what was happening. Dad, what's going on? She asked through tears. I'll explain everything later, sweetheart. Right now, we need to let the police do their work. The investigation team spent hours documenting evidence from the attempted murder. The sports drink contained dangerous pharmaceutical compounds. Webb's medical bag held additional materials and injection devices. Jessica's final journal entry, discovered during the search of our home, confirmed the murder timeline. June 7th, final day. Alex will die during family hiking trip. Marcus will appear as concerned physician, but treatment will fail. Natural cardiac death during strenuous exercise. Perfect plan, perfect crime. The trial began 6 months later, featuring overwhelming evidence of conspiracy and attempted murder. The coded journal provided the planning documentation, surveillance recordings captured their logistical discussions, and the physical evidence proved their methods. Jessica and Dr. Webb were convicted on all charges. Jessica received 18 years in state prison, while Webb got 25 years plus loss of medical license. Both were ordered to pay substantial restitution for investigation costs and victim compensation. The experience transformed my life in unexpected ways. My expertise in cryptographic analysis and cybersecurity investigation led to consulting opportunities with law enforcement agencies. I wrote a book about the experience that became a bestseller in the true crime genre. Most importantly, Sophia and I developed an even stronger relationship based on surviving shared trauma. She chose to study forensic science in college, inspired by seeing how investigation techniques could expose hidden crimes and protect innocent people. 3 years later, I married Emma Rodriguez, a medical examiner who understood the complexities of criminal investigation and the importance of justice. Our relationship was built on transparency, shared values, and mutual respect for professional expertise. Jessica serves her sentence in a North Carolina state facility with no possibility of early release. She has no contact with Sophia or any family members. Her former colleagues have completely rejected her, and her professional reputation is permanently destroyed. Dr. Webb died in prison 18 months into his sentence, his medical career and legacy utterly ruined. The cipher that revealed their secrets became the foundation for enhanced security protocols at pharmaceutical facilities across the country. My experience helped law enforcement agencies develop better methods for detecting and investigating conspiracy crimes. 5 years after the attempted murder, I spoke at a cybersecurity conference about the intersection of technical expertise and personal survival. Sometimes the most dangerous code isn't in computer systems, I told the audience. It's in the journal of someone you trust. Pay attention to patterns, verify suspicious behavior, and remember that analytical skills can save your life. The cipher had revealed my wife's deadly secrets. Professional investigation had gathered the evidence. Justice had prevailed over sophisticated evil. But the real victory was building a new life based on truth, transparency, and the knowledge that expertise and determination could triumph over betrayal and murder. Sophia graduated from Duke University with honors in forensic science, following in my footsteps of using technical knowledge to serve justice. On the day of her graduation, she asked me about the lesson I'd learned from surviving her mother's betrayal. "Dad, what would you tell someone whose world got turned upside down by discovering terrible secrets?" I thought carefully before answering. That truth is always more powerful than deception, no matter how sophisticated the lies become. And that the skills we develop to solve problems and protect others can become the very tools we need to save ourselves. The cipher had been broken. Justice had been served. And life had taught me that sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't the ones we choose to solve. They're the ones that choose us.